Cities that show up on real maps, then vanish. Lands where the sea turns to jelly, ruins buried under sandstorms with no clear origin. Were these places ever real, or were they slipping in from somewhere else entirely? These are lost cities that might be from a parallel Earth. There was once said to be a place called Hy-Brasil. Was it just a sailor's tale, or could it have really existed? Well, let's talk about it. Well, Hy-Brasil appeared on real maps as early as 1325, usually west of Ireland. For centuries, cartographers kept including it under names like Brazil or O Brasil, and a number of sailors claimed to have seen it. In 1674, Captain John Nisbet reported sailing into thick fog and spotted a strange island. He and his crew described glowing buildings, strange beings, and a kind of advanced civilization unlike any they'd ever seen before. Another captain, Alexander Johnson, described a very similar story. Now, what made Hy-Brasil different from other Phantom Island stories is that it kept showing up. The island was said to appear only once every 7 years and then vanish again. But was this just a case of mistaken identity? Maybe a rock formation? Or a mirage? Well, possibly, but some believe it was something stranger, an island that didn't exist in our world all the time, a kind of glitch, slipping in and out of reality. Thule first showed up in the writings of Pytheas, a Greek explorer who claimed to have sailed 6 days north of Britain around 320 BCE. He described coming across this strange icy land where the sea turned thick like jelly and the sun barely set. Roman writers who had come later picked up on the story, calling Thule the northernmost place on Earth, right on the edge of the known world. People have argued for centuries about where Thule might have actually been. Iceland, Norway, the Shetlands, none of them really match Pytheas' description. He was writing about this place where the sea, land, and air seemed to almost blur together, and where the people who lived there supposedly had incredible knowledge of the skies and seasons. In more modern times, and by that I mean the 20th century, the name Thule got roped into all these conspiratorial type theories and occult ideas, especially in Germany during the Nazi era, which added a lot of baggage, but long before that, it was known as this strange, unreal place. Did it ever really exist? It sounds incredibly far-fetched, but maybe Pytheas somehow came across a land that was never fully part of our world. Iram, or Iram of the Pillars, shows up in the Quran as a wealthy city built by the tribe of Ad. The people there were said to be arrogant and defiant and were wiped out by a massive sandstorm that buried the entire city. Western explorers became interested in Iram after British Army officer and archaeologist T.E. Lawrence called it the Atlantis of the Sands. That sounded pretty intriguing, so explorers started combing the Arabian desert to find it. They never did. But in the 90s, satellite images from NASA revealed ancient caravan routes in southern Oman. These led to a site called Ubar, where ruins of some sort of ancient fortress were found. Some thought that maybe this was Iram, but the scale and layout didn't quite live up to the grand city of towering pillars described in ancient texts. The mystery never quite got solved. There might still be pieces of this place under the dunes, but at this point we haven't found any solid evidence. Lyonesse was said to lie between Cornwall and the Isles of Scilly, a kingdom with cities, forests, and over 100 churches. As the story goes, though, the sea rose and engulfed the entire land. Only one man escaped, riding a white horse ahead of the flood. That story dates back to medieval times and shows up in Arthurian lore. People along the Cornish coast have passed down tales of hearing church bells coming up from the sea, especially after storms. Some claim to have seen spires or ruins under the water, too, and interestingly, geologists have confirmed that parts of the seabed in that area at one time sat above water, but no actual ruins of a city have ever been found. The line between actual history and folklore here is blurry. It's possible that rising sea levels flooded some early settlements and that memory turned into legend. But Lyonesse isn't just remembered as a place that got swallowed by the sea. Some believe it still exists, just somewhere else. Another plane of existence, hence why some people say they can sometimes hear those phantom church bells drifting in from the water. Deep in the mountains of Patagonia, people once believed in a hidden city called the City of the Caesars. It was said to be full of gold and silver, with immortal light-skinned people who lived in total isolation from the rest of the world. Depending on the source, they were shipwrecked Spaniards, Inca priests, Jesuits, or possibly even descendants of Atlantis. Explorers searched for this place for centuries. Some returned with stories, of course, seeing towers shimmering in the distance. Could they have really seen something? Maybe. But these are also stories that may have been made up entirely or mirages. But the Spanish crown funded expeditions, hoping the legends were true. Over time, historians started to see the city as this mix of fantasy and misunderstood sightings in some remote, unfamiliar land. Still, the idea never fully faded. Some versions of the legend describe the city as hidden by more than just mountains, that it only reveals itself when it chooses to. Not metaphorically, actually literally. Like, it exists slightly out of sync with everything else and can only be seen at certain times or to certain people. In Aztec legend, Aztlan was the ancestral homeland, a mysterious island city surrounded by water, filled with temples, birds, and white stone buildings. The name translates to place of whiteness or place of herons. From there, the Mexica, who became the Aztecs, migrated south and eventually founded Tenochtitlan. No one agrees where Aztlan was. Some think it was somewhere in the American Southwest, maybe northern Mexico, but nothing has ever been confirmed. Spanish chroniclers tried to trace the migration path, but mostly found contradictions. Over time, Aztlan became more myth than memory, a spiritual origin rather than a real historical place. The descriptions, though, are oddly specific. 7 caves or chambers radiating light, architecture that doesn't quite line up with anything known from that time period. Some scholars think Aztlan was symbolic, representing a lost age. Others have floated more speculative ideas, but there are no ruins, no direct evidence. Maybe it never existed at all. Maybe it never existed in this version of reality. Kitezh is often called Russia's Atlantis. According to legend, it was a holy city hidden near Lake Svetloyar. When Mongol forces showed up in the 13th century, the people didn't fight or flee, they prayed. The city reportedly sank into the lake before the invaders could reach it. Some say that on quiet nights you can hear the sounds of those prayers or see faint domes under the water. Some believe the city didn't just sink, that instead it became invisible, protected by some divine power. Only people with pure hearts are said to be able to find it. No divers or archaeologists have found evidence of a submerged city, but the legend has lasted for centuries, blending orthodox spirituality with deep Russian folklore. Zanjibār shows up in early Islamic and Persian texts as a distant, powerful island deep in the Indian Ocean. It's described as being ruled by dark-skinned giants, sorcerers, and kings who lived for hundreds of years. There were tales of magical birds, unrottable ships made from black wood, and ancient wisdom passed down through the ages. Some scholars think Zanjibār was a kind of distorted version of real places, possibly Zanzibar or other Swahili settlements on the coast, but that doesn't explain the more fantastical parts, aside, of course, from them being pure exaggeration, but that's no fun to talk about. Some stories say the island moved. In some texts it's near Madagascar, and others it's closer to India or far out towards the southern seas. It was written about for centuries though, but no one ever claimed to have actually reached it. In the 1500s and 1600s, European maps of North America often included a city called Norumbega. It was usually shown somewhere near modern-day Maine or Massachusetts on the banks of a wide river. Explorers like Jean-Alphonse and David Ingram claimed to have seen it, this lavish city with massive towers and beautiful people, but as more of the continent was mapped, Norumbega faded. Later explorers couldn't find it at all. Cartographers eventually dropped it from maps altogether, figuring the whole thing had just been made up. But it was hard for some to dismiss completely. Some believe the legend came from indigenous stories or sightings of real but misunderstood settlements. Others think it was wishful thinking from Europeans hoping to find another El Dorado. Shambhala is described in Tibetan writing as a hidden kingdom beyond the Himalayas, a peaceful land filled with advanced technology. Only those with the right karma are said to be able to find it. Even then, it's not always on this physical plane. The idea of Shambhala goes back over 1,000 years. Some writings say that it's a real place you can reach through hidden valleys or spiritual pathways. Others describe it as existing on another level of reality entirely. In the 20th century, Western explorers and mystics tried to find it. Even the Third Reich searched for what they believed was an ancient source of power that they could use for their nefarious purposes, but Shambhala isn't said to have sunk or been buried under the earth. It's said to be hidden by reality itself. Tibetan Buddhism treats it as this parallel world that overlaps with ours, one that you can tap into if you know how to align yourself. But with all that said, I've been your host James, and I'll catch you, yes you specifically, in the next video.